Hello and welcome back to A Real Horror Show, the YouTube channel dedicated to all things horror. Since Halloween Ends is still the talk of the town at the minute, I thought it'd be a good time to take a dive into 12 things, 12 Easter eggs, secrets, things that you may have missed on your watch of Halloween Ends. So let's get to it. Halloween 3 title screen. So coming up first is the title screens. So when you go to see a Halloween film in the theatre, there's always some things you can expect, and one of them is that classic orange text that comes up when the title screen rolls. However, in Halloween Ends, the filmmakers opted to do something a little bit different, and they chose this blue font. Now, some people may think that font looks very familiar, and that's because in 1982, when Halloween 3 Season of the Witch was released, it's the same font that was used in the title screens for that movie. Now, this is interesting for a few reasons, mainly because a lot of people have picked up that this entry in the series is very different from the classic thing that we used to with the Michael and Laurie Strode story, as was the original Halloween 3, as it deviates away from that. The original film did that, and it was panned by critics and fans alike, but has since become a major cult classic. I believe that David Gordon Green definitely knew what he was doing with this new trilogy, as it kind of mirrors a trilogy of the past. John Carpenter's The Thing. So next up is an Easter egg that I think a lot of people would have noticed when watching the film. Back in 1978, when John Carpenter, who created the Halloween universe, made the debut film Halloween, he put in a little Easter egg for people, and that is the 1951 film The Thing from Another World. Of course, if you know the original Halloween film well, you know this is the film that plays on the TV when Laurie is babysitting at the end of the movie. Now, a few years later in 1982, John Carpenter would come to make a remake of that film himself, simply titled The Thing. Since then, The Thing has become such a classic horror film, it's regarded as one of the best and one of Carpenter's best works. Now, this came full circle in Halloween Ends, as in the opening of the film, when Corey is babysitting a child called Jeremy, they're watching none other than John Carpenter's The Thing. The photo on Laurie's wall. Okay, so there's not much to say about this one, and I think this is another pretty obvious one for the fans of the original film. But in Laurie's kitchen of a house in Halloween Ends, we can see a photo on the wall, and the camera even zooms in on it at one point, and it's a picture of Laurie, Annie and Linda as they appeared in John Carpenter's 1978 film. The picture was taken on set of the original film, a kind of behind the scenes shot, and it was a nice addition to the new movie. The Nick Castle cameo. Now, just like in the previous two films of this trilogy, the actor Nick Castle, who originally played the Shape, Michael Myers, in the first Halloween film, makes a small cameo appearance. But unlike the last two films where he played Michael Myers himself, this time Nick does a cameo that's a little bit crazy and a bit out there. I think took us all by a bit of surprise. But there's a scene where Allison and Corey go to a Halloween party, then out of nowhere jumps up Nick Castle, and he's a flasher. He rips open his jacket and he shouts the line,
"Hey, Scarecrow, see anything you like?"
And this is a callback to the original film, as the character Linda says this as she flashes, well, what she thinks is Bob, her boyfriend, but it turns out to be Michael Myers himself. It was a strange cameo, but it was fun. Michael Myers and Pennywise the Dancing Clown. Okay, now, I'm not sure if this was the intention or not, and it could just be a coincidence, but it seems like there is a reference to Stephen King's most famous novel, or one of them, and one of his most famous characters, Pennywise the Clown, as this film is based 4 years after the events of Halloween Kills, and Michael has retreated down into the sewers underneath the town of Haddonfield, much like how Pennywise the Clown does in Derry, just like in the film and novel of It. This is more solidified as well in a scene where we see a dead body literally being dragged into the drain where Michael is underneath in the sewers. I'm not sure if this was the intention for an Easter egg, but it's hard to not make that connection when watching the film. Corey stalks Laurie. Now, Halloween Ends, as we all know, has become quite a controversial film that has divided a lot of fans. One of the main reasons of that is one of the big plot points, and that is the relationship between the boogeyman Michael Myers and this new character called Corey. There is a scene when Corey goes into the sewer and is attacked by Michael. Michael looks into Corey's eyes and he sees, I guess, that Corey is also pure evil, or he's got evil inside of him. I'm not sure, but they build this relationship and they start going on murderous kill sprees together. There is a scene later on in the film when Laurie is sat in a house and she looks out the window and she sees Corey stood outside looking up into her window just like Michael did in the original film. Now I'm guessing this is the filmmaker's way of telling us as an audience that Corey is following in Michael's footsteps and is also becoming pure evil. What makes this even better is that Corey's actually kind of stood behind a hedge, which is kind of recreating that very, very iconic shot of Myers in the original film where he is standing behind the hedge, stalking Laurie and her friends. Corey sits up like the Shape. This is basically an extension on the last Easter egg that I just talked about. There is a scene later on in the film when Corey and Allison are on the roof of this radio station and Corey decides to jump off the roof. And in this scene he falls onto the floor, and as he gets back up, he sits up in that creepy Michael Myers, you know the one. We've seen it throughout Michael Myers' career. It's a really iconic, creepy thing that Myers has always done. And I think this is the filmmakers trying to tell us once again that Corey is becoming that pure evil. The famous Bob kill. So once this relationship is established between Michael Myers and Corey, they start to go on killing sprees together. And one of their victims is a character called Dr. Mathis, who is Allison's boss at Haddonfield Memorial Hospital. And he's planning this romantic night as he's having an affair with one of Allison's co-workers called Deb. Long story short, Corey and Michael turn up at his house, ruin date night. Corey kills Dr. Mathis while the Shape looks after Deb, and he kills her in a very, very familiar way. For fans of the original, you would have caught up on this right away, and if you're a horror fan too, because it's a really iconic scene in Halloween 78 when Michael kills a character called Bob, and he does this by grabbing his neck, holding him against the wall, and pinning him to the wall with a knife. It's a really classic kill, and we all love to see it in this film. Lauries Outfit. If you're a big fan of the original 78 film, these next two Easter eggs are probably the most obvious in the film, and two that you would have picked up on right away. The first of these is Laurie's outfit. Now, in the climax of Halloween Ends, as it comes to the final confrontation between good and evil, Laurie and Michael, she's wearing a blue button-up and some trousers, very similar to the one she wore over 40 years ago at the end of Halloween 1978. I guess a true classic never goes out of style. The knitting needle. Now, as many fans will remember, in the climax of the 1978 film, Laurie stabs Michael Myers in the neck with a knitting needle as he's attacking her, causing him to collapse on the floor. Well, in the finale of Halloween Ends, when Laurie and Michael are having their final confrontation, Laurie once again reaches for one of her knitting needles, but clearly the Shape has learnt his lessons from the past as he stops her just before she stabs him in the neck once again. Survivors at the funeral. Now, once the boogeyman has been defeated and Michael Myers has taken one last iconic breath that has haunted Haddonfield for over 40 years, Laurie decides to parade the Shape's body around town before destroying it once and for all. And at this funeral procession, we see a few familiar faces from the past two films of this trilogy. One being Sondra, who was attacked in Halloween Kills, and her husband unfortunately died at the Shape's hands, and he stabbed Sondra in the neck with a tube light. A really memorable, iconic and very gruesome moment from Halloween Kills, but she clearly survived. And we also see Julian, the little boy from Halloween 2018, who was being babysitted by one of Allison's friends. It's good that they made it. Don't fear the Reaper and the final shots of the film. Well, here we are at the final Easter egg of Halloween Ends. As the 40-year story comes to a close of the good and evil, Laurie Strode and Michael Myers, the film ends with some very familiar still shots. Now, at the end of the original Halloween, as some may remember, the film ends with some still shots showing the Myers house, the babysitter house, just places that the Shape has been stalking throughout the film. And we can hear his iconic breathing in the background. letting us know that even though Loomis shot him off that balcony, he is still out there and the shape will return. However, things end a bit differently in Halloween Ends. We see some still shots of Laurie Strode's house, including the living room where the mask of the shape is on the living room table. However, things are a bit different this time, as we don't hear any breathing, it's just pure silence and it's peaceful, letting us know that Michael Myers is finally dead and the story has come to a full close. As the credits roll for this film, we do hear a song that is very familiar to horror fans, as they play Don't Fear the Reaper. Now this is a callback once again to the '78 film, as there is a scene where Laurie and Annie are riding around Haddonfield in Annie's car and it's playing that song. It was a really nice little touch to an ending of not the greatest films in the franchise, but still, it gave us some closure on the story. So that's it. That is the end of all the Easter eggs that I spotted during my watching of Halloween Ends. Now I'm curious, is there any that I missed? Is there any that you noticed that you thought would be in this video? Please let me know down below in the comments. And also, if you've not seen the review yet of Halloween Ends, please go to my channel, please check it out. All the support is really appreciated and it means a lot. So remember to like, comment, subscribe, follow me on Instagram, all that great stuff, and I'll catch you in the next one. Happy Halloween.